So let us delve into the nun's priest tale. And the nun's priest tale is considered to be a beast fable where animals act like human beings. So that can also, the beast fable is also used to not only show animals acting like humans, but also point out that humans can act like animals. And the purpose of a fable is to teach a moral or a lesson. And some possible sources Chaucer would have been familiar with would be Marie de France's fables, The Fox and Cock, and Aesop's fables of um, Reynard and Chanticleer. So um, this is a common type of literature during the Middle Ages. This is also to be considered an example of a mock epic or a mock heroic. And I'm going to come back to that in just a second. Also present in this tale are elements of the medieval dream visions. And if you look back to week one and the dream of the Rood, you'll remember that people in the Middle Ages were fascinated by dreams because they were considered a source of prophecy. Some other themes that we see in this tale are courtly love, which we talked about last week, an elevation of the simple life, um, fortune and its role in medieval society, husband and wife relationships, and the value of experience against autorité or authority. And there are two types of authority found in this tale: literary authority, such as the ancients and like Homer and the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Aeneid, and Virgil, all of these ancient texts that Chaucer would be familiar with, that Chanticleer very clearly kind of confuses and intertwines, not necessarily confused, but intertwines these various literary texts with biblical ones. So to go back to the mock epic. And if you remember in our discussion throughout the last couple of weeks, the epic was an extremely popular mode of literature during the Middle Ages. And of course, Beowulf is the most popular or most well-known medieval epic, but you also have Cullen and the Irish epic and some the Saga of the Volsungs, all these different types of epics that Chaucer and his audience would have been familiar with. And this is really kind of the beauty of the Canterbury Tales, where Chaucer can take all of these literary conventions, weave them together, and kind of turn them upside down on themselves. But the epic is replaced as the most popular form of literature during the Anglo-Norman period by these chivalric romances or Arthurian romances that feature courtly love. So anyways, to go back to the mock epic, and mock epic parodies these common stereotypes of heroic literature. And of course, the epic is basically this long narrative of a hero's journey and a hero's greatness. But some characteristics of an epic, we have these long formal speeches, which, if you notice, Chanticleer is very much prone to these long digressions or formal speeches about, well, everything. The divine intervention on human affairs, and we have that with Chanticleer's dream. Heroes who embody the values of civilization. A tragic hero who usually has a fatal flaw of pride, and how his pride leads him to this fall from fortune or this fall from favor. The setting is of vast scope, spanning nations, universes, the world. And of course, here the irony is that our vast scope is the very limited barnyard of this widow, and the presence of supernatural forces. Another key concept, in addition to courtly love, which you guys are familiar with, is this concept of the wheel of fortune, or fortune's wheel, which is incredibly popular in medieval literature. And the wheel of fortune, and we'll see this again next week, is a symbol of the capricious nature of fate. And this wheel is spun by the goddess Fortuna, and typically she's blindfolded. And at any given moment, someone who is on the top of the wheel fate can very quickly change and push them to the bottom. And this wheel of fortune is typically shown with kings and other powerful figures and how they fall from favor. And of course, that also goes back to this Anglo-Saxon concept of fate, and it also, or weird, and it also goes back to this kind of importance placed on the great chain of being, or that feudalistic structure where you have the king on top of everybody else, and once you lose that order, things go into chaos. So the nun's priest. And what's interesting, there are a couple of interesting things going on with the nun's priest tale. And you'll notice in our kind of discussion about the general prologue, where Chaucer describes all of the various different pilgrims, there's really no description of the nun's priest. He's overlooked. The only thing that we know about him is that he accompanies the prioress, and I'm going to come back to that in just a second. The nun's priest, we don't really get Chaucer, the narrator's perception of him, but we do get Harry Bailey, our host's perception. And we get that at the end of our tale, in the epilogue, where Harry Bailey says, "Sir Nun's priest, may your breeches be blessed for this merry tale of Chanticleer. By my word, if you were a secular man, if you weren't a member of the clergy, a very hearty fellow you would be with the women." So if he weren't a priest, he would be very attractive to women, because he sees what brawn and what neck this gentle priest has, and what a chest. He looks with eyes like a sparrow hawk. So he need not dye his color or bristle for Portugal. Now my goodness, come to you for your tale, sir. So we get this kind of description of the nun's priest as being this big, broad, brawny guy who's very attractive, and in some ways akin to Chanticleer. So in other words, he's pretty hot, and his tale and the kind of way he goes about telling it, because it's seen as a good tale by especially our host and the other pilgrims. The way he tells his tale, it makes him very attractive. And we can also draw some other inferences about the nun's priest through the telling of his tale. We know that he's an incredibly learned man, because he's so familiar with both biblical texts and popular ones. So he's incredibly learned, and he's also really intelligent and bright for being able to kind of weave this story through Chaucer, of these conventional standards and these conventional elements that he really kind of turns upside down to make a point. So, also, what we know about the nun's priest, we know his position, and I want to turn your attention to this kind of, I mean, his name, his title in the tale, the nun's priest. He is not called a priest, he is called the nun's priest. So we automatically get this kind of possessive quality of him to a woman. He is submissive to the prioress. And the prioress, we talked about her a little bit when we talked about the general prologue. But I want to take a minute to look at the role of the prioress and how that relates to our nun's priest, because it tells us a lot about him and his story. So it's presumed that this is the priest who is attached to the prioress's convent, or this religious community of women, and they need a priest because they need somebody to hold mass, to hear confession, to give communion, to provide all of these sacraments that a woman can't provide. However, the prioress, we know, is kind of a reluctant nun who takes great pains to imitate courtly behavior. And she comes from socially, we can infer that because she knows French, because she knows all of these kind of courtly conventions, that she comes from a very high standing family. She comes from wealth. And for these families, these wealthy families who have, a multitude of daughters, one of the popular ways of kind of providing for them all was to send some of them into the service of the church. And the prioress and her status in the church hierarchy is greater than that of her priest. She's the head of the convent, not him. And I wonder, and I want you to keep this in mind as we look at this story, is this fact that he is submissive to the prioress, that he is beneath her in both the church hierarchy and the social hierarchy, does that contribute to his attitude toward women? Okay. What's also different and kind of interesting about the nun's priest tale is that it doesn't follow the conventional frame of the rest of the Canterbury Tales, because there is no real prologue. What we have instead is this introduction that is more of a dialogue between various members of the pilgrimage, various members of the company. His tale, the nun's priest's tale, follows the monk's tale, and it's kind of interesting and worth noting that it does follow the monk. And because of the depiction of the monk that we get in the general prologue, we know that he is a prolific hunter. He is not much for clerical life, or this life of poverty and this life of service to the church. He's very excessive. He's prone to drinking. He's prone to wearing fine clothing. And he is described as being this kind of potent sexual figure. And his story is told before the nun's priest tale, and it's so boring, it's so depressing, it's so bad that the knight interrupts him. And the knight says, "No more of this drivel. I need a happy story. And Harry Bailey really kind of agrees and takes control of the conversation, and in a kind of rough and bold speech demands that he tell this kind of cheerful story. But what's interesting about Harry Bailey's demeanor is that while he's asking or demanding him to tell this story, he's also simultaneously insulting him. He says that not only by, calling him Sir John, but he says, "You ride a nag that is foul and lean." So he's making fun of the horse that the nun's priest rides. But it's also interesting to note that a nag is a female horse, so it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek way of saying that, you are attached to this foul creature that is the prioress. And the nun's priest, despite this, without really acknowledging this rather rude demand of the host, accepts the challenge without question. And it begs the question, is this kind of rude behavior, is this kind of demanding behavior something that the priest is used to? Is he this hen-pecked kind of husband, so to speak? So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to pick up with the actual tale, and we will talk more about Chanticleer and his beautiful wife, Pertolote.